In this episode of Life at 100 MHz, we explore the possibilities of time travel, the ability to tap into vertical time, and how to get yourself off of a recurring emotional time loop that you may be caught up in.
Right now, exactly at this very second, orbiting roughly 250 miles above your head, astronauts aboard the International Space Station are time traveling.
Literally.
Yeah, literally. I mean, they aren't just moving through space at, 17,500 miles per hour. They're actually traveling into the future.
By a microscopic fraction of a second, yes.
Right, but they are genuinely, biologically, and physically moving into a future that the rest of us here on the ground just haven't reached yet.
It sounds like pure science fiction, but it is a measured mathematical fact. Their clocks simply tick at a fundamentally different rate than ours do.
And that is the perfect starting line for what we are getting into today. Welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive. We have an absolutely massive stack of research, physics papers, psychological studies, and some really deeply personal case studies that you, our listener, shared with us.
It's an incredible collection.
It really is. We're taking a journey into the ultimate what-if of human existence, the mechanics, the psychology, and the reality of time travel. But, this isn't just a breakdown of spaceships and theoretical equations.
Oh, far from it. What makes the material you compiled so fascinating is the synthesis of it all.
Yeah.
We are going to bridge the gap between hard theoretical physics like Einstein's relativity and quantum wave collapse and the deeply human experiences we all face every day.
Because we're really talking about human intuition, right? The neuroscience of regret and these invisible psychological time loops that we get stuck in.
Exactly. The loops we don't even realize we're running.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I can promise you, by the time we reach the end of this deep dive, you are going to look at your past regrets, your anxieties about the future, and even the tiny decisions you make this afternoon in an entirely new, reality-altering way.
It completely shifts your perspective.
But to get to the profound psychological stuff, we have to set the ground rules first. We have to understand the actual physics of time. And I guess that means we have to start with Albert Einstein.
We do. Because, before Einstein, humanity operated under a very Newtonian view of time.
The rigid clock.
Right. Time was viewed as an absolute rigid metronome. Just tick-tock, tick-tock. It was an invisible clock sitting outside the universe, and it ticked at the exact same rate for everyone, everywhere.
So a second on Earth was exactly a second on Jupiter or a second in the empty void of space.
Exactly. But then Einstein comes along in the early 20th century and completely dismantles that. He proves that time is not a fixed metronome at all.
It's elastic.
Yes, it's a physical fabric that can be stretched, compressed, and warped. And because of that elasticity, the short answer to the time travel question is that forward time travel is absolutely 100% a proven reality.
That still just breaks my brain a little bit.
I know. The mechanism is called time dilation. And Einstein actually gave us two distinct, proven routes to achieve this forward leap. The first route is extreme speed, which comes out of his theory of special relativity.
So break down the why for me here. Why does moving really fast suddenly change how time works for me? Because it just feels counterintuitive. Like, if I drive my car fast, my watch doesn't slow down.
Well, technically it does, but by an amount so infinitesimally small that no standard watch could ever measure it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
To understand why speed alters time, you really have to accept the one absolute rule of our universe. The speed of light in a vacuum is constant.
Okay.
It is always roughly 186,000 miles per second, regardless of how fast the observer is moving.
So the speed of light is the universal speed limit.
Exactly. But think about what that means practically. Imagine you are standing on a train platform, right? And a train goes by at 100 miles per hour.
Sure.
If someone on that train throws a baseball forward at 50 miles per hour, to you, on the platform, that baseball is moving at 150 miles per hour. The speeds just add up.
Right. Simple addition. Makes sense.
But light doesn't do that. If that same train is moving at, say, half the speed of light, and someone turns on a flashlight pointing forward, you on the platform do not see that beam of light moving at 1.5 times the speed of light.
Because it can't break the limit.
Right. You see it moving at exactly the speed of light. And the person on the train also measures it at exactly the speed of light.
Wait, how is that physically possible? I mean, if we're both measuring the exact same beam of light, but one of us is moving incredibly fast and the other is standing still, shouldn't our measurements be different?
They should, yes.
Yeah.
Unless something else is bending to compensate.
Oh, I see.
And Einstein realized that the Something else bending was time and space themselves, because speed is just distance divided by time.
Right.
If the speed of light must remain perfectly constant for both observers, then time itself must actually slow down for the person moving on the train, just to keep the math balanced.
That is wild.
The faster you move through space, the slower you move through time relative to a stationary observer.
That is staggering. So to push this to the absolute extreme, if I get into a highly advanced spacecraft and I accelerate to like 99.9% the speed of light,
Okay.
and I fly around the cosmos for what feels to me like exactly 5 years, I celebrate 5 birthdays on the ship. When I turn around and land back on Earth, I haven't just moved through space.
No, you have traveled deep into the future. Depending on the exact decimals of your speed, you might step out of your ship and find that 50, 100, or even 500 years have passed on Earth.
Everyone I know is just gone.
All your friends are gone. Entire civilizations might have risen and fallen. You are standing in the distant future, and you have only aged 5 biological years.
That is the speed route. But there is a second route to the future in the notes, which is the gravity route, right? Tied to Einstein's general relativity.
That's right.
And this one is wild to me because I don't even have to move fast. I just need to find something incredibly heavy.
Correct. General relativity revealed that gravity isn't just a magnetic-like pull. It is the literal physical warping of the space-time fabric by mass.
So how do we visualize that?
Imagine putting a heavy bowling ball in the middle of a trampoline. The fabric sags, right? It creates a deep well.
Yeah.
That's exactly what a planet or a star does to space-time. And the deeper you go into that gravitational well, the slower time ticks.
So gravity literally acts like molasses for time.
That's a great way to put it. Time drags in the presence of massive gravity. Even right here on Earth, your head is actually aging slightly faster than your feet.
Wait, really?
Yes, because your feet are closer to the dense mass of the Earth's center. We are talking fractions of a nanosecond, obviously, but it is real.
Okay, so if I want to time travel into the future without a super fast rocket, I just need to park my ship near the most massive object in the universe, like a supermassive black hole.
Exactly. If you hover just outside the event horizon of a supermassive black hole, where the gravity is intensely crushing but just weak enough that you don't get pulled in time for you, it would slow to a crawl.
So I could just hang out.
You could sit there, read a book, drink some coffee, experience a casual weekend. But outside that deep gravitational well, out in the rest of the galaxy, thousands of years could be flashing by.
Which brings us back to the International Space Station. Those astronauts are actually experiencing both routes simultaneously, aren't they?
They are, and they are experiencing them in opposite directions.
Oh, because of the speed and the height?
Yes. Because they are moving at 17,500 miles per hour, special relativity dictates their time should slow down. But because they are 250 miles further away from the Earth's center of gravity than we are, general relativity dictates their time should speed up.
So there's a literal tug of war happening with their clocks.
Exactly. And when physicists calculate both effects, the speed effect actually wins by a tiny margin. So over a 6-month mission, astronauts return to Earth, having aged a few milliseconds less than the rest of us. They are bona fide time travelers.
Okay, so traveling forward is, in a way, just an engineering problem. If we build a fast enough ship or find a deep enough gravity well, the physics give us a green light.
It's practically possible, theoretically sound.
But forward is easy. The real holy grail of this discussion is backward time travel. We want to go back and fix a mistake. And this is where the physics seem to throw up just an impenetrable brick wall.
The universe is incredibly hostile to the idea of backward time travel. I mean, it violates the fundamental flow of cause and effect.
Right.
However, theoretical physics does offer a few hypothetical loopholes in the math, the most famous, of course, being the wormhole.
Right, an Einstein-Rosen bridge, a tunnel through the fabric of space-time. But how exactly would a wormhole act as a time machine rather than just, a shortcut across space?
It involves combining a wormhole with time dilation. Imagine you find a natural wormhole. It has 2 mouths. You leave one mouth parked right here near Earth.
Okay.
Then you tow the other mouth at near the speed of light, or maybe place it near a black hole so that time dilation takes effect.
So the 2 ends of the tunnel are now experiencing time at totally different rates.
Precisely. The mouth near Earth ages normally, moving into, let's say, the year 2050. But the mouth near the black hole, experiencing extreme time dilation, only ages a few days.
So it's effectively still in the year 2026.
Yes. So if you step into the mouth near Earth in 2050, you would walk through the bridge and emerge out the other side back in 2026. You have officially traveled backward in time.
But here comes the massive catch. The math allows for wormholes, but reality just doesn't seem to tolerate them.
No, that is the consensus among quantum physicists. The problem is instability. If a wormhole did form, the moment even a single photon of light or a single quantum fluctuation entered the tunnel, it would create an infinite positive feedback loop of energy.
Like putting a microphone too close to a speaker.
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
The energy builds instantly and violently, and the wormhole collapses and severs the connection faster than anything could possibly cross it.
So the door literally slams shut the instant you try to open it.
Yeah, the universe protects itself.
And what about the other loophole mentioned in the research? Cosmic strings.
Cosmic strings. They are highly theoretical, one-dimensional faults or, like, cracks in the universe, left over from the extreme pressures of the Big Bang.
Okay.
They are hypothesized to be infinitesimally thin, but unimaginably dense.
Yeah.
A single inch of a cosmic string could weigh as much as Mount Everest.
Wow. And how do a couple of impossibly heavy strings get me back to 1999?
Because of their immense mass, they warp space-time in bizarre ways. In the 1990s, the physicist J. Richard Gott theorized that if you had two cosmic strings moving past each other in opposite directions at near the speed of light, they would warp the space-time around them so violently that the temporal geometry would actually twist back on itself.
So it bends time into a loop.
Right. If you flew a spaceship in a very precise figure-8 trajectory around these two strings, you would arrive back at your starting coordinate before you ever left.
That is mind-bending, but again, the catch here is just absurd.
It is entirely impractical. First, we have absolutely zero astronomical evidence that cosmic strings even exist.
Right, minor detail.
And second, manipulating them would require harnessing the energy output of an entire galaxy. It is a mathematical curiosity, not a viable engineering project.
But let's play devil's advocate for a second. Let's say humanity survives another 1,000,000 years. We become a super civilization, and we somehow manage to stabilize a wormhole or wrangle two cosmic strings.
Okay, assuming the impossible.
Right, we build the physical time machine, the physics are sorted, now we run face first into an even bigger problem, the logic, the paradoxes.
Yes, the paradoxes are where the concept of backward time travel fundamentally breaks reality. A paradox is a logical impossibility. It's a sequence of events that contradicts its own premise.
And the most famous is the grandfather paradox.
The classic scenario, yes.
I get in my newly minted time machine, travel back 60 years, and I accidentally run over my own grandfather before he ever meets my grandmother, which means my parent is never born, which means I am never born.
Exactly. But if you are never born, then who drove the time machine back to run over the grandfather? It creates a closed loop of logical destruction. The cause deletes the effect, but without the effect, there is no cause.
It's an existential short circuit. But the second paradox in the material, the bootstrap paradox, is almost weirder to me because it doesn't involve murder, it involves information.
The bootstrap paradox explores the origin of things. The classic hypothetical goes like this. Suppose you were a huge fan of Beethoven. You memorize all of his symphonies, you get in your time machine, and you travel back to 18th century Vienna to meet him.
Okay.
But when you arrive, you find a young Beethoven who has zero musical talent. He has absolutely no idea how to write a symphony.
So in a panic, because the world needs this music, I write down all the sheet music from my memory and hand it to him.
Right. And he publishes it, history is saved, the symphonies are famous, and centuries later, you grow up listening to them.
And that is the paradox. Who actually composed the symphonies? Because Beethoven didn't write them, he just copied the notes I handed him.
But you didn't compose them either. You just memorized what you heard on a CD centuries later. The symphonies have no origin point.
That is so creepy to think about.
The information simply materialized out of nowhere, existing within a closed time loop, having never actually been created by a human mind.
It's like trying to deposit a check into a bank account that you only managed to open using the money from that exact check.
That's perfect.
The universe's accounting software looks at that transaction, realizes there is zero actual value at the origin point, and the system just crashes.
Yeah, it is a phenomenal analogy. The universe demands a balanced causal ledger. An effect must have a discrete cause. A transaction must have an origin of funds. If you attempt to force an event that bypasses causality, the logic of reality fails.
Right.
And this is exactly why theoretical physicists were forced to look for an escape hatch. If the math of general relativity allows for backward time travel, but the logic of causality forbids it, how do we reconcile the two?
And the escape hatch they found is arguably one of the most famous theories in modern sci-fi, but it actually originated as a serious mathematical solution. The many worlds interpretation or the multiverse?
Precisely. Under the many worlds framework, the paradoxes are resolved by removing the concept of a single, unchangeable timeline entirely.
Okay, walk me through how the multiverse fixes my Beethoven problem.
In a many-world scenario, the very act of you arriving in 18th century Vienna acts as a quantum disruption. The timeline instantly branches off. You have now created a parallel universe.
Universe B.
Exactly. In this new universe B, you hand the music to Beethoven, he publishes it, and that timeline progresses forward.
But what happens to the universe I left behind? Universe A.
Universe A remains completely untouched. In Universe A, the original Beethoven lived, struggled, composed the symphonies himself, and eventually you were born and got in a time machine.
So the ledger is balanced.
The ledger in Universe A is perfectly balanced. And the ledger in Universe B is also balanced, because the cause of the music in Universe B is a time traveler arriving from another dimension.
So I can never actually go back and change my past. If I made a terrible mistake 10 years ago and I build a time machine to go stop myself, I am only saving a parallel version of myself in a brand new universe. The original me still has to live with the mistake.
That is the grim reality of the many-world solution. It protects causality, sure, but it renders time travel completely useless as a tool for personal redemption.
Which brings us to a massive turning point in this discussion. Because if physical backward time travel is locked away behind collapsing wormholes, or if it just boots us into an alternate dimension, we need a new paradigm.
We do.
We need to look at how the listener's material proposes an entirely different way of viewing time. Not as a line we're trying to travel backward across, but as a vast static structure that we already fully inhabit.
This is where we transition from the physics of motion to the physics of perspective. Because the concept introduced in these notes completely upends how human consciousness perceives reality.
Right.
The listener describes our day-to-day existence as moving along a horizontal timeline, birth to death, day by day. But they propose that time is actually a vertical line.
A vertical line where everything is stacked on top of each other. The past, the present, and the future all existing at the exact same time. Now, I have to admit, this sounds incredibly spiritual or philosophical, but the research grounds us immediately in hard science.
It does. The vertical line concept is a near-perfect layman's description of a highly respected framework in physics known as eternalism, or the block universe theory.
The block universe.
Yes. This isn't fringe mysticism. It is the direct logical consequence of what Einstein proved about space-time.
Okay, I'm going to need you to break down the block universe for me, because when I first encountered this in the readings, my brain genuinely rebelled against it. It goes against everything my senses tell me.
And your senses are exactly what you have to discard to understand this. Biologically, we are wired to experience time as a flowing river.
Right. The past is gone, the present is happening.
Exactly. We feel like the present is the only thing that is real, and the future doesn't exist yet. It's just a blank void waiting to be built. But Einstein's math suggests that is a complete illusion.
How so?
Remember earlier when we talked about space and time not being separate? Einstein fused them into a single four-dimensional grid called space-time. Now let's think about physical space. If you walk out of your living room and into your kitchen, your living room doesn't suddenly cease to exist just because you aren't in it.
No, obviously it's still there. The spatial coordinate remains.
And the kitchen already existed before you walked into it. You simply changed your physical coordinates within an existing spatial structure.
Okay.
The block universe theory argues that because time is fundamentally woven into space, the exact same rules apply to time. The coordinate of your birth still exists. The coordinate of the year 1999 still exists.
And the coordinate of the year 2050 already exists.
Yes. You just aren't currently occupying those temporal coordinates.
The metaphor used in the notes is fantastic for this. They compare our linear, everyday experience of time to sitting in a movie theater.
It is the perfect analogy. When you are sitting in the theater watching the screen, you are restricted to experiencing the film frame by frame.
Yeah.
You watch the hero struggle, you don't know if they will survive the climax, and you feel the suspense of the unknown.
That is our biological experience of the present moment.
But the block universe perspective isn't the audience, it's the projection booth.
I love this.
If you walk up to the projection booth and look at the physical reel of celluloid film, you realize that the entire story exists simultaneously. The chaotic middle of the movie and the final resolution are sitting right next to each other on the physical reel.
So the future of the story isn't being magically created as the projector bulb hits it.
Exactly. It is already printed. Reality is a giant, unchanging, four-dimensional block containing every event that has ever happened and ever will happen.
There is a quote from Einstein included in the notes that hit me like a ton of bricks. He wrote a letter to the family of his lifelong friend, Michel Besso, right after Besso passed away.
Yes, a very famous letter.
Einstein wrote, "For us believing physicists, the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion." He wasn't just being poetic to comfort a grieving family, he was stating his literal scientific belief.
He was telling them that Besso wasn't gone in an absolute sense. The temporal coordinate where Michel Besso was alive, breathing, and interacting with the world still exists just as vividly and permanently as the coordinate where Einstein was writing that letter.
Our consciousness just moves past those coordinates.
Right. But the events remain permanently embedded in the block.
That is incredibly beautiful and comforting in a cosmic sort of way, but it also raises a massive, immediate problem for my day-to-day life, and this is the exact question the listener's material drives toward. If the block universe is real, if the entire film reel is sitting in the projection booth, and the end of the movie is already printed, what happens when I get a gut feeling?
You mean intuition?
Exactly. I am standing at a crossroads. I am about to sign a business contract or get on a specific flight or say something to a partner, and suddenly my stomach drops. Every alarm bell in my nervous system starts screaming, "Do not do this. This is a massive mistake."
Right, the warning signs.
If the future is already printed, what is that feeling? Am I somehow stepping out of the theater and peeking at the end of the film reel?
This is where we cross the bridge from physics to human psychology and consciousness, because those visceral bad feelings are universal. And your material explores two vastly different but equally fascinating explanations for how that peeking ahead might work.
Okay, let's hear them.
The first explanation leans into the absolute fringes of quantum mechanics.
Right, the concept of retrocausality, which, just based on the name, sounds like it breaks the very causality rules we just said the universe demands.
It does challenge classical causality, yes, but the quantum world plays by entirely different rules than the macro world. In classical physics, the cause always precedes the effect. The bat hits the ball, then the ball flies.
Obviously.
But retrocausality asks, if the future already exists in the block universe, could a future event send a ripple backward through the fabric of time to influence a past event?
Wait, so the effect happens first, and that creates the cause in the past.
In certain highly complex quantum laboratory experiments, specifically variations of the delayed choice quantum eraser experiment, physicists have observed phenomena where the measurement of a particle in the present seems to dictate the path that the particle took in the past.
It's almost like it retroactively changes its mind.
It is as if the particle knew it was going to be measured and altered its history to comply.
Okay, but that is subatomic particles. How does that translate to me getting cold feet about signing a contract?
And it requires a massive speculative leap to apply quantum mechanics to human consciousness, admittedly. But the theory is that our consciousness operates on a quantum level.
Right.
Under this retrocausal view, when you are standing at that crossroads and you feel an overwhelming sense of dread about path A, it isn't just a random nervous twitch. It is a distress signal.
A distress signal from who?
From you.
Wow.
The theory posits that a future version of you, existing further down the vertical line of the block universe, did take path A. They signed the contract, the business went bankrupt, and they experienced intense trauma and regret.
So they suffered the consequence.
Exactly. That massive release of emotional energy created a quantum ripple that traveled backward along the timeline. And your present consciousness is sensitive enough to pick up the echo.
So future me is effectively sending a quantum text message back to present me saying, bridge out ahead, turn around. That is wild. It makes intuition feel like a literal superpower.
It really does.
Yeah.
But the material also provides a second explanation for intuition. And this one doesn't require quantum ripples or time travel. It is firmly grounded in mainstream evolutionary biology and neuroscience.
Oh, the predictive processing model.
Yeah.
And honestly, the neuroscience explanation feels almost as magical as the quantum one once you understand the sheer horsepower involved.
Because the computational power of the subconscious brain is staggering. The predictive processing model states that your brain is not a passive receiver of reality. It isn't just a camera recording the world.
It's an active participant.
It is a highly aggressive, deeply sophisticated prediction machine.
Explain how that works in the moment. I'm sitting across the table from a guy. about to sign this contract, what is my brain doing?
Your conscious mind is focused on the words on the paper and the conscious conversation. It can process maybe 40 or 50 bits of information per second,
Okay.
but your subconscious mind is processing roughly 11 million bits of information per second.
11 million.
Yes, it is recording the microscopic dilation of the other person's pupils. It is registering the incredibly subtle micro-expressions of contempt or anxiety flashing across their face for a fraction of a second.
Things I would never consciously notice.
Never. It measures their pheromones, the slight tremor in their voice, the posture they are holding, and it takes all of those millions of data points and instantaneously cross-references them against every single experience, conversation, and outcome you have ever had in your entire life.
So my brain is essentially running massive data analytics in the background while I'm just trying to read paragraph 4.
Precisely. It is running thousands of complex Monte Carlo simulations of the future based on that subtle data.
Yeah.
And in this scenario, the algorithm calculates a 98% probability that this person is lying and that this contract will end in disaster.
But instead of sending me a logical report, it just hits me with dread. Why? If my brain is so smart, why doesn't it just give me the math?
Because logic is too slow. The prefrontal cortex, which handles conscious reasoning, is biologically slow and metabolically expensive. If you were being stalked by a predator in the ancestral savanna, you didn't have time to logically deduce the species of the animal based on the rustling grass. You needed to run. So the subconscious bypasses the logical brain entirely. It communicates directly to your nervous system.
It fires a physical warning shot.
Exactly. It dumps adrenaline into your bloodstream. It causes your stomach to tighten, your heart to race. It forces a physical reaction to stop you from making the choice.
It literally forces you to pause.
Because this process is so deep, so complex, and so instantaneous, your conscious mind cannot trace the steps that led to the conclusion. Therefore, it feels like a mystical premonition of the future, when in reality it is just an unimaginably fast biological algorithm predicting the highest probability outcome.
But here's where we have to pause. Because whether it is a quantum ripple from a future mistake or an 11 million bit biological algorithm predicting disaster, the end result is the same.
You don't sign.
Right. I get the bad feeling and I put the pen down. I don't sign the contract. I change my mind. And that choice brings us to the absolute core philosophical tension of this entire deep dive.
You are talking about the collision between determinism and free will.
Yes, because if the block universe is real, and the entire film reel of my life is already sitting in the projection booth, how can I change my mind?
It's a paradox of perspective.
If I put the pen down, was my decision to put the pen down already printed on the film? Are we actually making choices, or are we just actors hitting our marks in a script we didn't write? It feels incredibly fatalistic.
It is the trap of classical determinism. If the future is fixed, your choices are an illusion. But the material you provided and the listener's own interpretation of it rejects that pure fatalism. They introduce a much more elegant, empowering framework known as compatibilism.
And compatibilism,
Right.
meaning destiny and free will are compatible. They can exist in the same room. But how?
To understand compatibilism, we have to move away from the metaphor of a single straight train track and look at the analogy of the topographical map.
Let's explore the map, because this is where the theory gets really practical.
Imagine that the block universe isn't a rigid track. Instead, imagine your life as a vast, sweeping topographical map laid out by the universe. Within this map, there is an element of destiny. Certain major geographical features are fixed coordinates.
So there are mountains I am destined to climb, rivers I absolutely have to cross.
Yes. There are major soul lessons you are meant to learn, massive challenges you are meant to face, and perhaps specific pivotal individuals you are destined to intersect with. These are the fixed, non-negotiable coordinates on your vertical line.
Okay, so the destination is fixed. Where does my free will come in?
Your free will operates in the navigation. The destiny dictates the terrain, but it does not dictate your footsteps. How you choose to get to that mountain, which valleys you walk through, whether you take the steep, agonizing path directly up the cliff face or the winding, scenic path around the back, that is entirely up to you. You are the navigator.
So it's like using a navigation app on my phone. The destination is plugged in, the app knows where I need to end up, but as I'm driving, the app chimes in and says, "Heavy traffic ahead, proposing an alternate route."
I like that.
That chime is my intuition. It's my spiritual guide or my predictive brain warning me about a terrible path.
That is a perfect modern analogy.
But I am the driver. I have the sovereign free will to look at the app, ignore the warning, and drive my car straight into gridlock traffic. I can choose the painful route.
And when you make that choice, the universe does not break. The block universe doesn't catch fire. The navigation app simply accepts your choice, says rerouting, and dynamically calculates a new, perhaps longer, perhaps more difficult path to eventually get you back to that fixed coordinate.
But this naturally raises a huge question. If we have these spiritual guides or this incredibly powerful intuitive subconscious, and they genuinely want what is best for us, why do they let us drive into the traffic?
Right, it's a great question.
Why do they let us make the terrible choice, marry the wrong person, take the disastrous job? Why doesn't the system just force the steering wheel out of our hands?
Because if the system forced your hand, the entire purpose of the human journey would be destroyed. From both a spiritual perspective and a psychological developmental perspective, the answer comes down to growth.
Soul growth.
Exactly. If an external force, be it a spirit guide or an infallible biological instinct, always overrode your free will to ensure you only ever experienced comfort and success, you wouldn't actually be living.
I would just be a passenger in an autonomous vehicle.
You would be an automaton. You would never develop a genuine self. Free will is an absolute necessity because consequences are the only true teachers. A good decision where you listen to your intuition keeps you smoothly aligned with an optimal path. But a bad decision, the choice to ignore the warning and dive into the painful detour, that is the crucible.
It is the suffering of the detour that forces us to change.
Exactly. It is on those rocky, miserable, ill-advised detours where you are forced to develop resilience. It is where your ego is broken down. It is where you learn profound empathy because you cannot truly understand human suffering until your own heart has been broken by a poor choice.
Wow.
The detour is not a glitch in the block universe. It is often the exact curriculum you needed to be ready for the destination.
And this beautiful balance between the fixed destination and the winding journey is perfectly illustrated in the sources. The listener provided an incredibly vivid personal case study from their own life. A literal crossroads they stood at back in 1996, which is just a masterclass in how the map dynamically reroutes.
Yes, the 1996 case study takes all this theoretical physics and grounds it in a lived human life. Let's look at the parameters. The listener is in their 20s, and they are facing a massive divergence on their map. Two distinct paths.
Path A is the Atlanta Olympics. They have an offer to work in IT, specifically in the server group, directly interfacing with high-level TV media and broadcasting. It is an intense, high-profile career launchpad.
And Path B is completely different, an opportunity to take an IT job in Saudi Arabia. A total leap into the unknown, an international adventure, far removed from the glitz of the Olympic media.
So the listener exercises their free will. They weigh the options, they tune into their intuition, and they choose the detour. They walk away from the Olympics and TV media, and they move to the Middle East, where they end up living, working, and growing for 5 entire years.
It is a massive, life-altering chapter.
But the truly mind-bending part of the story happens almost 30 years later. Fast forward to the year 2024. The listener is looking for a new role, and they miraculously land an IT job. And where is it? It is at a TV broadcast station.
This is what we can call the echo of the unchosen path. When you view this through the lens of the block universe and the topographical map, it is stunning. It suggests that the universe, or the listener's higher trajectory, had a specific cluster of themes earmarked as a fixed coordinate for their journey IT infrastructure intertwined with TV media.
But because all of time exists at once on that vertical line, bypassing the TV media coordinate in 1996 didn't erase it from reality. It didn't destroy the opportunity.
No. The universe simply said, rerouting. The script of the listener's life recalibrated. The system acknowledged that they were bypassing the media coordinate to pursue the international adventure coordinate.
Right.
But because the media coordinate was an essential destination on the map, the universe just moved it further down the timeline, holding it in place, waiting for them to arrive in 2024.
And this highlights the deep, almost shocking wisdom of that predictive mind we talked about earlier. When the listener was standing at the crossroads in 1996, their intuition was doing incredibly complex calculus regarding the seasons of a human life.
The listener noted that they instinctively knew the door to the overseas adventure was a closing window. It was a perishable opportunity.
Right, because moving to the Middle East for 5 years is a grand, feasible adventure when you are in your 20s. You are unattached, you are flexible. But if you try to make that same leap in your 40s or 50s when you have a mortgage, deep community roots, a spouse, perhaps children or aging parents,
The logistical and emotional friction makes it nearly impossible.
The intuition recognized the finite timeline of the adventure door, but it also seemingly calculated that the TV media door was a permanent structural fixture on the map. The broadcast industry wasn't going anywhere.
So by choosing Saudi Arabia, they didn't lose the destination. They optimized the journey. Think about the alternate timeline, the parallel universe where they stayed in Atlanta in '96.
They could have spent 30 continuous years in TV media, a straight, linear, unbroken line.
A perfectly respectable path, sure, but look at the cost. They would have traded away a half-decade of profound international immersion, living in a vastly different culture, facing unique structural challenges, expanding their worldview in ways that a 30-year career at a local TV station could never provide.
And because they took the detour, when they finally arrive at the TV station coordinate in 2024, they are not showing up as a burned-out employee who has been grinding in the same industry for 3 decades.
Not all.
They are arriving with fresh energy, a massive wealth of diverse experience from different sectors, and a seasoned perspective. They are perfectly optimized to ride that final coordinate into a secure, fulfilling retirement.
It is the ultimate proof that the map is forgiving. It honors your free will to explore and dynamically shifts the pieces to ensure you still reach the mountaintop.
But, and this is a heavy, crucial pivot in the material, the 1996 detour was a positive, expansive recalibration. The listener chose adventure. However, the deep dive notes force us to confront the much darker side of this phenomenon.
It's important we talk about this part.
Because human beings don't always take expansive, scenic detours. Sometimes we step off the main path and we wander into a detour that we cannot escape. We get trapped, the topographical map literally loops in on itself, and we just keep walking in circles.
Yes. We have to transition from the empowering echo of a chosen path to the devastating reality of the unconscious loop. The listener introduces a hypothetical but tragically ubiquitous scenario to illustrate this trap.
Set it up for us.
Imagine a young girl who grows up with a deeply abusive, emotionally violent, or completely unavailable father. She suffers immensely through her childhood. She survives it, becomes an adult, and sets out to build her own life.
But then as she enters the dating pool, she subconsciously seeks out and repeatedly marries men who possess the exact same abusive, toxic traits as her father.
Right. She marries them, tries desperately to fix them, fails, gets hurt, leaves, and then finds another partner with the exact same profile.
The listener asks a profound question here. What is the mechanics of this tragic wheel? Why does it keep spinning? And the research reveals that this specific loop is recognized and diagnosed across 3 entirely different disciplines: psychology, physics, and Eastern philosophy.
Each discipline uses a different vocabulary, but they're all describing the exact same temporal trap.
Let's start with the psychology, because that is the most grounded for most people. Why would someone actively seek out the very thing that destroyed them?
In clinical psychology, this relentless wheel of suffering is called repetition compulsion. It was first deeply explored by Freud, and it is understood as a massive subconscious defense mechanism erected by the human ego.
But how does inviting more abuse defend the ego? That seems completely backwards.
You have to look at it from the perspective of the child who was originally wounded. When a child experiences severe trauma, their ego experiences an absolute terrifying sense of powerlessness.
Right.
They are helpless victims of a godlike figure, their parent. The psyche cannot handle that level of powerlessness. So, as the child grows into an adult, the subconscious mind becomes desperately, obsessively driven to regain mastery over that original wound.
He wants a do-over.
Exactly. The subconscious believes, if I can find a man who is just as broken, just as cold, or just as abusive as my father, and if I can somehow love him enough or endure enough or be perfect enough to make him change and finally love me back, then I will retroactively heal the original wound.
I will prove that I was always worthy of love.
Exactly. And I will defeat the trauma.
But the tragedy is that they are choosing partners fundamentally incapable of providing that healing. They're choosing broken tools to fix a broken heart.
So the experiment fails every single time. The script plays out exactly as it did in childhood. The trauma is simply reinforced. And the person is locked onto a linear wheel. They believe they're moving forward in time, meeting new people, experiencing new years, but psychologically their consciousness is running laps around a single, fixed coordinate of pain in their past.
And when we take that psychological loop and map it onto the physics of the block universe we discussed earlier, it aligns with an incredibly terrifying concept from theoretical physics called a closed time-like curve, or a CTC.
We mentioned earlier that extreme gravity warps space-time. Einstein's equations actually allow for the theoretical extreme, where space-time is warped so severely that the fabric bends entirely back on itself, creating a closed time-like curve.
So if I am flying my spaceship and I get caught in a physical CTC, I might feel like I am flying straight forward at top speed. I am burning fuel, I am looking out the windshield at what I think is the future.
Right.
But because the space-time itself is curved into a literal circle, my forward momentum inevitably, unavoidably brings me right back to the exact coordinate where I started.
You are permanently trapped in a localized temporal loop, entirely cut off from the rest of the expanding universe. And that is a perfect physical metaphor for repetition compulsion.
It perfectly maps onto it.
The person's internal psychological template has been so warped by the gravity of their unhealed trauma that they are living inside a mental CTC. They enter a new year, a new relationship, believing they are moving forward. But the warped gravity of their past inevitably curves their choices right back into the familiar abuse.
And the material notes that ancient Eastern philosophy recognized this exact same wheel thousands of years before Einstein or Freud. They call it samsara.
Yes, samsara is the endless, exhausting cycle of birth, suffering, death, and rebirth. It is characterized by the endless repetition of habitual, painful patterns. And the engine that powers the wheel of samsara is karma.
And we need to clarify this because the material points out a huge misconception in the West. Karma is not a cosmic judge with a gavel punishing you for being bad.
Not at all.
Yeah?
Karma is a Sanskrit word that translates simply to action or doing. In this philosophical framework, every unresolved action, every unhealed trauma leaves a dense, energetic imprint on your consciousness.
Okay.
And the mechanics of the universe dictate that until you bring conscious awareness to that imprint and heal it, reality will continually present you with the exact same lesson.
The universe will keep serving you the same toxic partner, wearing different faces and different names until you finally learn how to pass the test and step off the wheel.
Exactly. So the vital question becomes, how does the girl escape the CTC? How do we break the wheel of samsara? And the material looks to quantum mechanics, specifically the observer effect, to provide the escape route.
The observer effect. This is the idea that looking at something changes how it behaves. But how does that work and how does it cure trauma?
In quantum mechanics, before a particle is measured or observed, it does not exist in a single fixed state. It exists in a fluid state of multiple overlapping possibilities, what we call quantum superposition.
Like Schrodinger's cat.
Precisely. The famous double-slit experiment proved that a particle acts like a wave of potential until a conscious observer looks at it. The moment observation occurs, the wave function collapses, and the potential locks into a single physical reality.
Okay, so apply that to the woman trapped in the abusive loop.
As long as her trauma remains entirely subconscious, as long as she has no idea that she's trying to fix her father through her husband's, she's not an observer. She's a completely unconscious participant. She is running on autopilot.
She's just living the script.
And without a conscious observer to collapse a new reality, the quantum wave of her relationship choices will automatically, predictably collapse into the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
The exact same abusive loop she is used to.
Gravity just pulls her around the curve again?
Yes. But the quantum shift occurs the exact moment she brings that subconscious pattern into the harsh light of conscious awareness. This usually requires a massive catalyst. It could be deep, painful trauma therapy. It could be hitting an absolute emotional rock bottom. Or it could be a sudden, profound realization.
So she is sitting in her therapist's office or sitting alone in her car, and the light bulb suddenly turns on. She looks at her life and says, "Oh my God, I am dating my father. I am running a script."
Yes.
Does that realization make her the conscious observer? Just by looking at the loop, does the spell break?
Yes, because observation fundamentally alters the system. By stepping back and observing the pattern from a place of pure awareness, she has stepped onto the vertical timeline. She has ascended to the projection booth. She ceases to be the helpless victim inside the film and becomes the observer of the film.
She realizes she is inside the closed time-like curve.
And in that moment of observation, she suddenly perceives the superposition. She realizes that collapsing back into the arms of an abusive partner is not the only reality available to her. The wave hasn't collapsed yet.
She sees the other paths.
She spots a completely different, previously invisible branch on the vertical timeline. A branch where she chooses to establish rigid boundaries. A branch where she chooses the initial discomfort of solitude over the familiar pain of toxicity.
The old abusive loop doesn't disappear from the map. The potential to date another terrible person still exists as a coordinate, But her consciousness is no longer blindly feeding it energy. She alters her frequency, collapses a new wave function, and physically steps onto a new track.
She engineers her own escape velocity from the gravity of the trauma.
But here's the thing. The material makes it very clear that you don't have to be suffering from severe clinical childhood trauma to fall out of sync with time.
No, not at all.
Repetition compulsion is the extreme end of the spectrum. But there are much more subtle, incredibly common traps that we all fall into every single day. The expert notes break down 3 distinct temporal illusions.
Yes, these illusions occur when we misalign our internal perception of time with the actual physical reality of the universe.
And by mapping these psychological struggles directly onto the laws of physics, we can diagnose exactly why they cause so much friction. The first of these illusions is what we call temporal anchoring.
Or, as the notes vividly put it, living your entire life in the cosmic rearview mirror.
Yeah, that image really stuck with me.
Think about how light travels across the universe. It takes time to cross vast distances. When you step outside and look up at the star Sirius, you are not seeing Sirius as it exists in this exact moment. You are seeing the light that left that star over 8 years ago. You are literally looking at a ghost of the past.
And millions of humans suffer from temporal anchoring, meaning their consciousness operates exactly like that telescope. Their emotional, mental, and energetic focus is entirely rigidly anchored to a specific event in their past.
It could be a profound grief they refuse to process.
Yeah.
It could be a massive, life-altering mistake they ruminate on every morning. Or, conversely, it could be a golden age, the glory days of high school, or a past relationship they idolize and refuse to let go of.
So while their physical body is forced to march forward along the linear timeline, going to work, paying bills, getting biologically older, their consciousness is stuck at a fixed coordinate 10 miles behind them.
Right.
They are trying to navigate today's highway while staring exclusively in the rearview mirror.
And this creates intense suffering because it directly violates one of the most unbreakable laws of physics, the law of thermodynamics.
Okay.
The material references an image from Forbes that beautifully illustrates the cosmological arrow of time.
Entropy, right?
Yes. The universe, driven by entropy, dictates that time flows strictly in one direction, forward. Entropy is the measure of disorder or chaos in a system. And in our universe, entropy always increases.
You cannot unspill a glass of milk. The milk is on the floor. You cannot unscramble an egg. And you cannot unbreak a heart.
Precisely. Trying to mentally live in the past is a subconscious attempt to reverse entropy. It is an exhausting, futile attempt to force the universe to flow backward. It creates immense psychological friction.
So what is the escape hatch? If I am anchored to a mistake I made 5 years ago, how do I pull the anchor up?
The escape requires realigning your internal timeline with your physical reality. And the primary tool for this is somatic grounding.
Meaning getting back in your body.
Yes. Your memories, your regrets, your nostalgia, those all live in the abstract, electrical realm of the mind. But your physical body, your nervous system, your breath, the weight of your muscles can only ever exist in the immediate, microscopic present moment.
You have to drag the abstract mind back into the physical body.
Yes. By focusing intently on physical sensation, you force your consciousness out of the past coordinate. Furthermore, within the block universe framework we discussed, you have to accept that the past coordinate is fixed. The ink is dry.
You can't change it.
You cannot erase that frame from the celluloid film reel. The liberation comes from realizing that while you cannot change the past frame, you have absolute sovereign free will over the next frame you choose to step into.
Okay, so temporal anchoring is staring in the rearview mirror. But the second illusion is the exact opposite problem. The material calls it cosmic speeding, or living in the event horizon of anxiety.
If temporal anchoring is refusing to leave the past, cosmic speeding is desperately, exhaustingly sprinting ahead of the present.
The illusion here is severe, chronic anxiety. People trapped in this illusion are constantly racing ahead of the linear track. They aren't dealing with the email in front of them. They're mentally simulating 50 different, highly detailed, catastrophic futures simultaneously.
Right, trying to solve disasters that haven't even physically manifested yet.
And the physics deficit here is a profound misunderstanding of quantum superposition.
Exactly. We talked about how a quantum system remains fluid, holding multiple possibilities at once, until it is observed. Anxious individuals are trying to prematurely force the wave function of tomorrow to collapse today.
By worrying about it.
By obsessing endlessly over the absolute worst-case scenario, they inadvertently anchor their energetic focus to it, drawing it closer to reality.
So how do you escape the anxiety sprint? How do you stop forcing the wave to collapse?
Through a protocol the material calls the 5-minute horizon. You have to radically, forcefully narrow your field of vision. If your mind is spinning out of control, trying to manage what your career or your marriage will look like in 5 years, you have to collapse that timeline.
You focus only on the next 5 days.
Or if that is still causing panic, you focus only on the next 5 minutes.
You shift your focus from what is possible to what is probable. The anxious mind panics because technically anything is possible. An asteroid could hit the Earth tomorrow. I could lose my job today. But the calm, vertical mind asks, what is actually probable right now, in this specific room, in this specific hour?
Exactly. That shift from possibility to probability instantly signals the nervous system to drop out of the fight-or-flight response.
And finally, we have the third temporal trap, the waiting room illusion. This one is characterized by passive determinism.
This is the trap of looking at the block universe, seeing that the future already exists, and making a deeply flawed conclusion. People decide, well, if it's all pre-written on the map, my choices don't matter. I will just sit here on the couch and wait for the universe to deliver my destiny to my doorstep.
It's mistaking calm, spiritual surrender for passive, hopeless inertia. They just stop trying.
And the physics deficit here is literally Newton's first law of motion, inertia. An object at rest will stay at rest permanently unless acted upon by an external force.
And in the context of human life, that required external force is your intent and your physical action.
The block universe may contain all possibilities, but it demands human consciousness and physical momentum to select and navigate them.
The universe isn't going to carry you to the mountain. It just provides the map. So how do you break out of the waiting room?
You have to break the inertia through micromass experiments. You don't need to change your whole life in a single day. You just need to introduce a tiny, unexpected new variable into your stagnant system.
Drive a completely different route home from work. Listen to a genre of music you claim to hate. Rearrange the furniture in a single room.
You are breaking the automated pattern to prove to your brain that you are still the one driving the car.
You introduce a new force into your personal gravitational field to shift the trajectory off the couch and back into motion.
Exactly.
So when we put these three illusions together, it creates a perfect driving analogy. Temporal anchoring is driving your car down the highway at 60 miles an hour while staring obsessively into the rearview mirror.
Right.
Cosmic speeding is trying to drive while staring through binoculars at a potential pothole a mile down the road. And the waiting room illusion is just sitting in the driver's seat with the car in park, engine off, waiting for the scenery to magically change.
The ultimate goal, the only way to actually navigate the map safely, is to just sit back, hold the wheel, and look calmly through the windshield at what is immediately in front of you.
That is exactly it. And looking calmly through the windshield is the definition of becoming the awake observer.
But that leads to the ultimate million-dollar practical question of this entire deep dive.
How do we actually stay looking through the windshield? How do we remain this calm, awake observer when modern life is explicitly engineered to throw 1,000 distractions, notifications, emails, and crises at us every single hour?
It is arguably the greatest cognitive challenge of our era, because the digital society we live in is designed to pull you off that calm vertical axis and drag you into the reactive, panicked horizontal rush.
Yeah.
But the material provides a highly specific, neurobiologically grounded daily protocol to build a containment field around your attention. And it begins the very second you open your eyes in the morning.
The first directive is clear. Protect the first 30 minutes.
When you first wake up, your brain is in a very delicate, highly receptive transitional state. You are moving from the deep unconscious delta waves of sleep up through the theta waves and into the alpha brainwave states.
Oh.
These specific frequencies are where your default mode network is highly active.
The default mode network. Explain why that matters.
The default mode network, or DMN, is the neurological network responsible for lateral thinking, deep intuition, creativity, and a sense of interconnectedness. It is the exact quantum state where your consciousness is naturally, effortlessly plugged into the vertical timeline.
When you are in alpha and theta, you are highly intuitive, calm, and present.
But the trap, the absolute guaranteed way to destroy that state, is reaching for the smartphone on the nightstand.
Oh man, everybody does it.
The moment you grab that phone and check your emails, read a text message, or look at the news headlines, you are instantly hijacking your own neurology. You violently force your brain out of those calm alpha waves and collapse it into a rigid, reactive beta wave survival mode.
You deactivate the default mode network and activate the task positive network.
You go from feeling the universe to hunting for threats, and answering emails.
Exactly. You have plugged yourself into the horizontal stress timeline before your feet have even touched the floor.
Therefore, the practice is non-negotiable. You must give yourself the first 20 to 30 minutes of the day entirely screen-free. Use that time to sit quietly on the edge of the bed, to breathe, to look out a window.
You must anchor your status as the observer before you allow the external world to start demanding your attention.
Exactly.
Okay, so you protect the morning, you set the baseline. But then you go to work and the chaos inevitably starts. Your boss is yelling, the inbox is overflowing, and you feel that cosmic speeding anxiety ramping up. The notes offer a specific somatic tool for this exact moment. The 5-5-5 rule.
You don't need to retreat to a mountaintop or sit in a lotus pose for an hour to access the vertical line. When you're in the middle of a frantic day and your mind is spinning out into a dozen future catastrophes, you need a physical circuit breaker.
The 5-5-5 rule is a pattern interrupter.
Yes.
You pause exactly where you are, even sitting at your desk. You actively look around and identify 5 things you can see with your eyes. Then you focus on 5 things you can physically feel. The texture of the chair against your back, the weight of your feet pressing into the floor. Finally, you listen closely for 5 distinct sounds in the environment.
The biological mechanism of why this works is profound. Your logical mind is incredibly powerful. It can easily detach from reality and obsess over an imaginary future in the block universe.
Yeah.
But your physical senses, sight, touch, hearing, are neurologically locked into the absolute present coordinate of space-time.
By forcing your attention onto those sensory inputs, you immediately drag your consciousness out of the future loop and drop it back into the physical room. You collapse the anxiety waves.
Exactly.
But what about the constant internal interruptions? Because people get so frustrated with mindfulness, they try to be present, they do the 5-5-5 rule, and then 10 seconds later, an intrusive thought pops up about a bill they have to pay, and they feel like they failed the meditation.
That frustration stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of the practice. The goal of mindfulness is not to maintain a perfectly blank, undisturbed mind. That is impossible for a functioning human.
Right.
The goal is to change your relationship to the disturbances. You must treat distractions as weight training.
Reframing distractions as reps in the gym. I absolutely love this concept.
Think of your attention like a bicep. Every single time your mind inevitably drifts away into a distraction or an anxious thought, and you notice it, and you consciously, calmly choose to bring your focus back to the present moment, you have just completed 1 rep of mental weight training.
You just did a mental bicep curl.
Exactly. You are actively strengthening the neural pathways of the observer. The distraction isn't the failure, it is the resistance required to build the muscle. Without the distraction, you couldn't build the awareness.
And to maintain this muscle throughout the day, the material suggests establishing a daily rhythm. We talked about the morning intention, but there are also midday ambient resets.
You use the natural physical architecture of your day as triggers to remember to be the observer. Every time you walk through a doorway, or every time you are waiting for a program to load on your computer, use that tiny pause as an automatic cue to check your physical body.
Are you clenching your jaw? Are your shoulders creeping up to your ears? Is your breathing shallow?
Notice the tension, let it go, and consciously drop your energetic weight down into your feet.
And then finally, the evening tape clearing. Before you go to sleep, as you are lying in bed, you mentally replay the events of the day backwards, from the evening back to the morning.
But the key is, you don't judge the events. You don't analyze the argument you had at lunch or agonize over an email you sent. You just watch the memories play out like silent frames on a movie reel.
This is a neurological filing process. It signals to your brain that the day is a completed block of time. It tells the subconscious that there are no more active threats to process.
It prevents your mind from endlessly looping on unresolved stressors while you try to sleep, allowing you to drop back down into those delta waves and truly reset.
And there's this one final, incredibly liberating concept in the practical application notes. It's about recognizing your character structure or your ego defense armor. We all built these psychological suits of armor when we were kids to protect ourselves from being hurt.
Sure.
Some of us get hyperlogical, some of us try to control every variable in the room, some of us completely withdraw and isolate.
Yes, and when we are stressed, when we fall off the vertical line, we automatically, subconsciously step back into that childhood armor. But the awake observer doesn't get angry at themselves for putting the armor on. They don't judge it.
The moment you feel yourself tightening up, you simply observe it and say, there is my defense mechanism. It is trying to protect me.
The sheer act of recognizing the armor means you are no longer trapped inside it. You have separated your consciousness from the reaction. You have stepped out, you're observing it, and you are immediately back on the vertical timeline.
It is so freeing to realize that you don't have to build the vertical timeline. You don't have to construct this state of deep peace from scratch with hours of grueling meditation. As the material emphasizes, it is the fundamental fabric of reality underneath all the noise.
Accessing it isn't about doing more work. It is simply about letting go of the exhausting, constant effort of running mentally into the past and the future.
It is about surrendering to the exact temporal coordinate you are currently occupying.
Yes.
What an incredible reality-bending journey this has been. We have covered an immense amount of ground today. We started with the absolute hard physics of time dilation, proving that the astronauts above us are traveling into the future right now.
We navigated the paradoxes that forbid backward travel, which led us into the profound reality of the block universe, where the entire film reel of time exists simultaneously.
We explored the incredible mechanics of intuition, how our brains run 11 million-bit probability algorithms to act as spiritual GPS systems, mapping out the terrain of destiny while honoring our absolute free will to take the scenic, sometimes painful detours.
We looked at the beautiful 28-year echo of the unchosen path from 1996 to 2024, proving that the universe saves our destinations, even when we change the route to optimize our growth.
We confronted the darker loops, the closed time-like curves of trauma and repetition compulsion, and learned how the observer effect can collapse those waves. We broke down the temporal illusions of anchoring to the past or sprinting into the anxiety of the future.
And finally, we armed ourselves with the neurobiological tools to protect our mornings, ground our senses, and become the awake observer.
It is a framework that fundamentally reshakes how we view our existence, which leaves us with one final, lingering implication drawn from everything this material has taught us.
If the block universe is indeed real, if the entire film reel of your life exists simultaneously, it means that the future version of you already exists. The version of you who has already successfully navigated whatever struggles, heartbreaks, or anxieties you are facing today. The version who made it through the painful detour and arrived safely with deep wisdom at the destination. That version of you exists right now on that vertical timeline.
So the provocative question you must ask yourself is this. If that successful, peaceful, resilient future version of you is already out there on the map, what are they trying to whisper back through the quantum timeline to you today? What is the intuition, the guidance, or the comfort they are trying to hand you right now?
That is a very powerful thought.
That is something to sit with for a long time. I want to sincerely thank you, our listener, for sharing such an incredibly deep, challenging, and mind-expanding curriculum with us. It has been an absolute privilege to unpack the physics, the psychology, and the philosophy of your journey.
It really has.
Keep trusting your intuition. Keep treating those distractions as weight training. Keep practicing that 5-5-5 grounding. And above all, keep exploring your map. And the next time you look at a roadmap and you see that bold, rigid, unmoving line, remember that the map is just a suggestion. The journey, the timeline, the actual navigation, that is entirely up to you.
So there's no going back in time. And future time travel works only at high speeds in outer space. But you can tap into that vertical timeline to get a glimpse of possibilities of the future. And if you find yourself in an emotional time loop, know that you have the ability to jump off that crazy wheel. It won't be easy, but it is possible. Please check out our other podcasts on life at 100mhz.com.